Yeah, so my name is Vlad, and I'm software engineer at Health Samurai, and I was involved time to time in developing Smart on FHIR on top of 8box. And today I want to share with you some implementations we made to support it and in our solution. And Smart on FHIR, as an extension of OAuth 2.0, explains how user may share the rights he has on the resources with an external smart applications. And for us, this means that your implementation of Smart on FHIR has to respect security policies applied in your current system. And there are many of security policies may be applied. For example, patient can see only its own clinical data or also clinical data of clinical data of their children, or practitioner may see all clinical data in the system, not financial data, or practitioner can see only clinical data within organization they work at. And there are many other policies you may find. And in this talk, I want to walk through some implementations and see how they may evolve in light of Smart on FHIR coming. And the first option you can start with is an ad hoc solution. Authorization in this case is hard-coded in your business logic. And it's pretty easy to develop this one, but it's pretty hard to maintain it eventually. And you may come with an idea that authorization should be dedicated in your solution. And there are two different approaches depending on what you put in the center of your access control. Will it be operation or resources? For example, if you start with operation, you may find that policy engine approach may work for you pretty well. And let me show you how it implemented in 8box. The idea is that you may create access policy resource, and the purpose of authorize method in 8box is to execute them on every incoming request, and if at least one access policy accepted the request, then the whole request is considered authorized. And let's have a look at the specific example. So here we can see policies for patient, so patient can see its own encounters. We enabled here mature engine, which is like a pattern for incoming request. So we just check that we accept get request for encounter URL, and we expect to see here parameter patient, which should match patient ID in user resource. And we accept only requests from patient portal by this policy. And if we want to enable Smart on FHIR for the same operation or the same endpoint, we can just create a copy of this policy and update a few fields. For instance, we may say that this operation can be performed by any client who has type smart application, and there is encounter read scope should be presented in session related to access token issued for this specific smart application. And the biggest pros of this approach is that it looks pretty simple to implement, and it really does. It's also easy to track what exactly policies allowed request. It's also easy to add new policies because you need just to create new resource in the system and it will be applied immediately in runtime. Simplicity really drives it and make pretty good level of confidence in your access control if you go with this solution. But this has pretty important downside, and it requires your smart applications to know exactly what endpoints and what parameters they should pass in the request to get the response. And if you have a control over your applications, over your clients, like for example, you develop smart application of yourself, then this approach may work for you pretty well. But for example, if it's not possible for you and you want to set up some existing smart application and you don't have control over requests they can send, then you may find that it will not work for you. And when we made this feature request to support external smart applications, we were looking for a solution which is not far from access policy engine idea. And we thought, what if our access control would be able to manipulate with incoming requests? And we came to idea to develop a number of middlewares you can just turn it on or off, and we implemented in those middlewares predefined security models. For example, if we can see request for encounter and we find a link to the patient ID, we just enhance this request with patient parameter and allow this request to be performed. It smells like ad hoc solution in some way, and unfortunately, there is only one way to configure this. You can just turn on middleware or off this one. But if you want to implement your own middleware, for example, with 8box, for now it's not possible. And then we turned to another pool, another idea how we can implement security policies. We came to access control list. So the idea is that you put not operation in the center of your access control, but resources. You just specify users and resources and relationship between them, defining what user has access to what data. And you may think like putting authorization layer between business logic and persistent layer. So we implemented this solution with 8box API constructor, and here you can see an example of search operation over encounter resource. So here we just redefined an operation and said that we want to enable ACL search operation, FHIR operation for encounter resource, and we enabled here ACL filter, which you can find below, and depending on what user came via this request, we define different filters, and you can see below how it looks like. For example, if we go and get encounter with no additional parameters, and our system finds user patient ID in the incoming token, it just adds where close to the resulting query, and we just look here for only encounters which belongs to the patient. But if practitioner comes and tries to run the same request, we run another filter, apply another filter here, and checks that, for example, in this case, practitioner should be general practitioner for the specific patient. Then he can see all encounters of them. You may ask how Smart on FHIR can be implemented here, and my answer would be still access policies, but more simpler one. So you can just specify the same macho engine policy, and because you need to check if the smart application still has appropriate scope to run this operation. And then all other ACL filtering will be applied underline. The pros of this solution, I would name that it allows you to specify filters and enables filtering inside while running the request, because you could just filter all data in one request and not run like view requests to validate authorization. But the biggest issue with this solution, as I can see, it's hard to understand and start working with this, because you need to understand that concept which was developed. It's not so hard, but still has high threshold. And here, like researching what we can do with this, how we can create a more simple DSL for ACLs. We were researching for across the internet, across white papers, and run into Zanzibar solution. Maybe you're familiar with this. Zanzibar was presented by Google, and this is like authorization system created by them, which was presented 4 years ago. And they say that it is a global system for storing and evaluating access control lists. And what we really liked about this is that they specify pretty nice language to describe your models. For example, they split configuration into 2 parts. The first one, you need to specify your model, your data model. For example, you can implement here FHIR model, and then you specify tuples. There are like relationship between your data. And in this example, we just defined a document with name readme and specified just few roles like viewer and owner. And we said that Bob and Alice, we said in our system that Bob and Alice can view this document, and also can view the document all members of engineering group. And then we specified that Dave is a member of this group. And once we specified all those tuples, we can run checks and validate what document is available for what person. and it runs also transitional logic. Like we can check that Dave, as a member of engineering group, also can view the document. Actually, Zanzibar and similar solutions is still, I'm still researching this one. I ran into this recently, and I feel that this one may be pretty promising for FHIR model or FHIR solution, because it looks like we try to share with our customers more simple and more clear FHIR API, and we want to run all hard security policies inside, just sharing, exposing more easy API for them. And in conclusion, I would like to mention that if you have control or influence on your smart clients, then you may implement 8-box-like access policies, like policy engines. They are cheap and easy to implement and maintain. But if you don't access to your clients and you want to implement more clear API for your clients, then you can have a look at ICL solutions, for example, Zanzibar as well. And that is all I wanted to share with you. Thank you. And I'm ready to answer your questions.
Thank you, Vlad. So now you see how implementers are struggle with policies. Yeah, so this Zanzibar is based on data log, so it's quite nice logical model and theoretically proved. And that's what I think missed from most of access control, that you could not reason about potential leaks, data breaks.